Thanks for tuning into today's podcast. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our new remote training here at RPP. We've been offering remote training for quite some time, but we always required the athlete to come in-house for an assessment. Now we can do the whole assessment online and bring all of our services, pitching, hitting, and strength training to your doorstep. So, if you like what we do and how we do it, go to our website at rocklandpeakperformance.com and click on Remote Training in the toolbar. Thanks. The Behind the Scenes podcast. I'm your host, Nunzio Signore, looking to bring you great dialogue with some of the best in the world of player development. The world of training baseball players has changed dramatically during the past few years, and I'm looking forward to shedding some light here on what's the latest, what's the best, and what's really happening in the world of player development. Thanks for joining me for the ride. Hey guys, welcome to the Behind the Scenes podcast. Today we're interviewing Sam Sharf. Sam is a co-founder of College Sports Advisors, and he serves as the director of baseball operations. He brings with him nearly 10 years of experience guiding families and athletes through the baseball recruiting process. Previously, Sam was vice president and director of player development at Time to Sign Sports for 7 years. He's a graduate of Penn State University, where he was student assistant for the Penn State Baseball program from 2009 to 2013. Personally, I have known Sam for several years, and I have to tell you, Sam is as knowledgeable as anyone about the recruiting process. His devotion and his commitment to diligence, to his athletes is bar none, as he spends hour upon hour and day upon day traveling to watch his guys take the field while showering them with advice about everything from not only the recruiting process, but crucial tools such as strength training, skill training, and even nutrition. I can't begin to count the times that Sam has called looking for second and third opinions on the best route to help an athlete perform at their best. This makes him an invaluable tool when you're looking for baseball college recruiting advice, and Sam is the man. Today we're sitting down and we're talking to my buddy Sam Sharf. What's up, Sam? How you feeling today?
I'm doing great. I appreciate the intro. Obviously, it's been a busy summer for us. And,
how'd I do there, man? How'd I do?
Fantastic. Man, you went through the whole thing all the way back to 2009. That makes me feel old.
You know, Shirazi, my partner, Bahram, he's really good sometimes at adding to everything, and he dives a little deeper sometimes and finds some nooks and crannies that I really don't always find. So let's kick it off. There's no doubt that the college recruiting process is changing and shifting. There's quite a bit happening, especially since the one-year waiver rule went into effect. Can you please explain the one-year waiver rule and what impact it has had on the recruiting process?
Sure. That's a big topic in our world right now, no doubt. I think that the best way to summarize it is, it allows student athletes to move from a Division I institution to another Division I institution and be immediately eligible to play. Historically, going back prior to this rule change, if you were going to go from School 1 to School 2 at the Division I level, you had to sit out a year in residence, is what it was termed. And it just made it less incentive for both the player and the school to kind of venture down that route. There was obviously still transfers going on at that point, but with this rule change and the ability to be immediately eligible, basically, you look at where we are right now in the calendar, guys finishing up, their prior season in May, June, and now being able to go to a school and be able to compete this fall into the 2023 season. That's a huge change when it comes to recruiting, because it allows, college coaches to have another source of players that are able to come in and contribute right away. I think the big component with that is you're getting guys that have been on a college campus for a minimum of 1 year, potentially more, definitely more experience just in terms of the day-to-day lifestyle of what it's like to be a college baseball player. They're going to be anywhere from 19 years old plus, so you're getting a guy who's a little bit more physical and prepared in that aspect as well.
So would you say that it would be correct to say that a college coach would rather recruit a known freshman from another college than a high school prospect? Would you, is that a pattern that you're finding? And if it is, how is that affecting what you do with high school athletes?
Sure. Look, I think that there's a lot of different ways that coaches are thinking about this. There's definitely schools that are recruiting the transfer portal, right, heavily in terms of being able to use that as a source of players. There are still programs that are doing a lot, through the high school ranks. And then you're getting a lot of blended classes, right, where they're going to use the transfer portal for a certain element of a class, and then certainly continue to recruit high school players. But I don't think that there's a consensus across the board in terms of one way or another. I think you got to kind of look where you are in terms of program building and how it best fits your roster. And I think the other thing too is within the transfer portal, one year waiver situation, there's a variance of different things, right? You can recruit that guy who's been on campus for maybe 2 years, and you're getting a guy who has 100 innings on the mound and has been really successful and was now going to make that jump up from, let's say, a small Northeast conference into a Power 5, right? Sometimes you're getting, that bounce back guy, right, after year one, where hey, he was in, a top 40 type baseball program. It didn't work out after year one, and now he's going to bounce back into the mid-major, small conference level. So there's a lot of different types of recruitment going on through the transfer portal as well. And again, it goes back to what the needs are for that coaching staff and how to kind of best put it together so that they can be, competitive on the field in the spring.
I was talking, talking to Coach Bomber from Sac City, and he was saying that there's pros and cons to both sides. He said sometimes, you get a kid who's more experienced, and that's a great thing. And sometimes, you don't know what baggage you're getting with that too. And sometimes it's better to go with a young, eager high school kid ready to come in and follow protocol. You know what I mean? So,
100%.
That's
I think the biggest thing with the transfer portal that coaches have probably, had to think about is just culture, right? And how do you build a strong culture with guys who are just kind of coming in for 1 to 2 years versus, kind of what you're saying, where you get that, 18-year-old high school kid he's going to fit into what's been established and, is kind of looking for that identity at the college level.
So what I do see now that, life gets a little more tight for the junior and senior high school kid. What I do see is I see a lot of kids. I don't know if it's from their parents or if it's from the kid or if it's from both. But what I do notice my guys are doing is kids seem to be flocking to showcases, and I don't know if it's a paranoia effect, which it probably is. I kind of get it, you know what I mean? But what's your opinion on showcases? I feel like this year I've seen kids, because there's a lot more kids that don't have a commitment right now, that they're flocking to these showcases. What is your opinion on showcases? And I see a lot of these young athletes that are going are showing up showcase after showcase, throwing the same low, unrecruitable metrics. So I personally don't get that. I do understand the franticness of it, but given the situation of the portal and how things are getting tighter, do you think? Do you go by the same old theory that we've talked about before about not showcasing yourself off the list still? Can you speak upon that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. You got to be ready to go out there and showcase, right? When we talk about, I would say, some general metrics, you got to be in that 7.0, 60 mark area. Positional velocity, 85 or better. Exit velo, probably in that same 85 plus category. And then on the mound, I would say low to mid 80s is probably that beginning threshold. From a pitching perspective. I think recruiting has definitely slowed down for this 2023 cycle. Right, I look at where we are right now. In mid August, and there's still Division I opportunities. Out there for players in this class. Where if you go back to previous years, I would say most of that recruiting was probably locked down at this point. So definitely feel that that's resulting in a situation where you're saying that you got a lot of players that are, jumping at these showcase opportunities, but you got to do your due diligence. You got to make sure that it's the right setting for you, in terms of the schools that are going to show up, in terms of what's going on at these individual events. Like if you're not a big metric guy, right, you got to make sure that there's going to be a game format inside of that showcase where,
That's
hey, maybe
great.
you're a little bit more of a field guy, where you can go out there and, show your understanding of, speed of the game, how you handle certain, situations that come up, throughout the course of a few innings, versus just being a guy who, hey, I'm a 6'4" runner. I'm 90 plus from the outfield. I'm going to be able to, turn on some fastballs in BP, and that's going to be my opportunity to flash. So you got to understand, how your skill set fits into the recruiting process at large, and then build a strategy to put yourself in the best places always.
Great. So this is where I need some advice, because I don't deal with the parents a lot. Some of them will come in here, and when they do come in, I'm glad that I don't deal with them a lot. I don't envy you all the time that you have to do that. But sometimes, I have a kid who comes in. He started late. He's been to his pitching coach, who tells him not to lift weights because he'll get tight. And he's been at 79, 80 miles an hour for the last 3 years. Now he's 16 years old and he's paranoid. And his parents look like deer in headlights. And they're coming to me. And all of a sudden they want the velocity to go up 5, 6 miles an hour this year. Right? It's not a safe way to do things. It could happen, but in the same sentence, they're telling me, well, he'll be gone for this week, and then he'll be home for 3 weeks, and then he'll be gone for another week. And for me, I'm looking at a kid who's throwing 79, 80 miles an hour. He's 5'9" and he's 140 pounds. Okay. And his parents are feeling that pressure. They started late. There's nothing you can do about that. But what I'm trying to figure out is, how do you nicely tell a parent, this might not be the right thing to do? Because I've tried the, you don't want to showcase yourself off the list sometimes, and maybe because I'm not a college recruiter, or I don't have a service, and I'm a strength and conditioning coach. They look at me like I'm a little crass. You know what I mean? Like, dude, my kid's standing right here. But I'm just trying to figure out what is a great way to explain this honestly and a little bit more sensitively to parents that, hey, listen, I know you love your kid. I know you're wishing the best for them, and I know you see them imploding right now, and you're trying to do what a parent does, make it all go away. How do you kind of explain maybe going to 5 showcases in September and October isn't the thing to do?
Yeah, well, I think we always start with the basic, line of everybody's timing is going to be different in the recruiting process, right? We have,
Great.
2025s and 2024s right now that are ready to get recruited, right? They're maybe a little bit more physically or, a little bit more skilled than other guys, and they're ready to start to garner the interest with the college coaches. We have guys in those same classes that aren't quite there yet, and that's okay. We've got some 2023s right now that are on the verge of getting Division I offers inside of this time period, right? Their timing was just a little bit later on in the cycle. So you have to understand, where you fit in terms of the college baseball landscape, because that's going to start to dictate some of those decisions, right? Obviously, the ACC, SEC, they're recruiting 2024, 2025, 2026 today, versus, some of the small Northeast conferences where they're mainly in this 2023 class. So that's always, the first step is kind of understand where you fit, and then, understand how to showcase off of that. But with younger guys, time is your friend, right? So you talk about a 16-year-old who's most likely a 2024, like you have a whole nother 10-month to 12-month window before you really get into, the end game phase of your recruiting process. So don't worry about showcasing right now. Make sure that you have the best plan in place to continue to develop. And, for us at CSA, that's such a foundational piece of what we talk about. Yes, our guys are here to get college baseball opportunities, but if you're not big, strong, and fast and working on those things, those are the fundamental pieces of every player's recruiting process.
That was awesome information. So what I took from that is, kids 16 and over, just have to explain to them, listen, man, everyone's timing is different, and that's okay. 16 and under, time is on your side. So let's put a good game plan in place, and that may be more beneficial for you at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a lot better than you don't want to showcase yourself off the list. That was my old go-to, and I just saw like I looked like I grew horns in front of them.
It's the same message.
It is the same message. You're spoon feeding it though, which is really, really, it's always better. It's always better to do that with a lot of these kids there is just, they come in sometimes looking like, and a lot of these kids, they come in and look at me and I'm like, wow, dude, you're actually here because your parents are making you come here. I can look at them in the eyes and see it.
Sure.
So they have to put on top of that this whole thing that's going down with less and less recruits, and you've got the parent getting more crazy, and I'm just trying to figure out how to juggle this.
No doubt. And I'll say this, I think, there's a lot of great things about social media, but when it comes to the pressures of the recruiting process and they open up their phone and they see, a 2025, put up his commitment on Instagram, that really starts to get the family and the kid racing in terms of, oh, I need to be that same guy.
It's like looking at velocity. It's like looking at velocity.
Yeah, 100%. And it's dangerous because, hey, you were something. Yes, hey, it's great for that kid, but that doesn't mean that now is your time just because you're the same age, right? Everybody is going to have to, look at where their timing is going to be right in terms of getting in front of the schools and ultimately, hopefully getting an offer.
And I think what I see a lot is you have these dads and these moms sometimes who have this game plan in place from when the kid was like 10. Okay. They're trying to build the perfect beast. They come in and they actually want to know, I want you to train my kid like a Major League Baseball player instead of like, you know what? Let me train your kid like a Major League Baseball player trained when he was 10. That's better. Yeah. That might be a better way to go about it. And what happens is they have these, they might be a little bit more superior genetically at a young age, but a lot of those guys, Eric Cressy always had a great statement. He said, early to ripe, early to rot. And sometimes you see these guys. So having time on your side at 15, 16 years old is not a bad thing. You're going to peak right through the puberty process instead of been banging your body up for the last 4 years since 12 years old. And now you're 16 and you're starting to break. You know what I mean? So that's another good thing. For a young athlete visiting college, they're going to college after college. What should they be looking for when they're trying to evaluate what might be the right fit for them? You got a couple bullet points?
Yeah, I think for us, we look at fit as a place where you can excel as a player, a student, and a person. All right. And if you find, a coaching staff that's invested in you, a place where you can get a great education that's going to impact your life for the next 40 years and be able to have a great experience, that's a great fit. Ultimately, I'm a big believer in the facilities, the uniforms, all those things. They're not going to be there 5, 6 years down the road, but the relationships with the coaching staff, your teammates, those are life bonds that are going to be with you long after baseball's over. And then the experiences, right? The big games, the trips, the big hits, the big outs on the mound, whatever that is, those are things that are going to last a lifetime. So hone in on those things. And if you can put yourself, again, in a situation where, the education is going to carry you through and you get a great opportunity to compete on the field, that's generally a great fit. Certainly families have certain ideas of what they want to do in terms of, regionality, types of campuses, and those things are important. You want to enjoy your college experience, but the recruiting process is really difficult, like we're talking about here today. And, yes, you could want to go to a place, but that coaching staff has got to want you. And it also has to be a fit in terms of what they're looking for in this class. We just had this pop up the other day where, it's a school that they're looking for a left-handed hitting infielder, right? So that's a very specific type of person, right? You could be good enough to play at that school, but if you're a right-handed hitter,
you're out of luck.
Not a fit right now.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. So when you start to hone in on, how complicated this thing could be in terms of needs and how coaches are building their class, like, don't sit there and talk about like campus size, right? Because when you get in that baseball environment, it's the guys in the locker room and your coaches. That's your circle right there, people. And I don't care if you're at, school with 40,000 or a school with 5,000. That's going to be your day-to-day group of friends, teammates, and certainly coaches that you're going to be around, and certainly, grow relationships at a very high level.
And I think an important thing that you touched on was the fact of, a place where you can excel as a student as well in the education process, because as much as young kids don't want to hear it, they're probably more than likely not going to play Major League Baseball. And you know what? It's very, very hard to tell a 17, 16-year-old kid that, listen, man, you're going to be using that education more than likely. So you better make sure that while you're worrying so much about the baseball field, you got to really figure out what kind of degree are you going to walk out of there with, and is that going to help put money in your pocket later? And that's a really hard
100%.
discussion with a young kid.
No doubt. I will say this: we've got some really smart kids. They sometimes don't even grasp that. I think it's our job as people who are guiding them to make sure we never lose sight of that 40-year vision, and that we're always thinking about that as we kind of build the process and ultimately, have them make a decision that's going to, benefit them in that regard down the line.
Great. So on the other side of the coin, can you give me a few mistakes that athletes you see make sometimes during the recruiting process that you would try to tell parents and athletes alike to stay away from, to steer clear from?
Sure. I would say first and foremost, something that we touched upon earlier is prioritize player development, right? The better the player you are, the more opportunity you're going to have. Everybody has a ceiling, obviously, in terms of how good they can get, but the better you are, more opportunity there's going to be. We jokingly say this all the time: you don't get bigger, faster, stronger, and get worse. It just doesn't happen. I've yet to see that happen. So if you're hitting on those levels with great, training, your game is going to benefit greatly from it. So prioritize player development. The second piece would be, don't rush the recruiting process. Right? At the end of the day, there's a school out there for everyone. The level of play is going to dictate the timing of that. You need to be patient. You need to have good people in your corner that can create a strategy that's built for you, and just not generically in terms of how we all think the recruiting process should work, so that you're able to work towards finding that fit for you as a student athlete and for your family. Right? Once you start to think about the financial component of college, that's also a big factor. The school's expensive. Right? So what's your financial threshold, right, for your family? And then the last part, I would say, in terms of, places where I think families and, players are making mistakes is, don't make a decision that looks good on Instagram and on a bumper sticker. Make a decision that is going to benefit you for the next 4 years on the field, and then carry you into your profession long term.
That's a really, really, that's a really great one. So while we're on this topic, how about some advice to parents to not assist in blowing it for their kid?
Well, I will say this.
You know what I'm saying, right?
No doubt. There's a lot of coaches that believe you're recruiting the family just as much as you're recruiting the player. I can't tell you how many times I'm at, tournaments or showcases, sitting there alongside coaches, and, they're commenting on, what dad is doing every time there's a bad strike call, or, hey, look at this dad who, in between innings, he'll sneak down on the other side of the dugout so that he could chat up his son between. Like, you're being watched, especially as you get into late game recruiting, and they're making that decision on, should we offer him or should we hold off? Like, they're examining every move. So mom and dads need to be definitely aware of that. And then I think the other thing is just, put your kid in a situation where he's got great people around him that can help evaluate him, make sure that the right schools are coming to watch him play, and then trust those people. Right. I think that the funny thing that happens sometimes, not just to us, but I speak to travel coaches often, is, right, you go through all of this, and then, the family still wants to say, hey, you're saying, he can play in, small Northeast Conference Division I, but what about Duke, Virginia, and Vanderbilt? right? It's like, well, you trusted us to do the evaluation, right? These are the schools that we think are in play. These are the schools that are recruiting your son. Like, you now have to buy into that part of the process. Like,
Yes, that's
bigger
where
isn't always better.
I guess that's where your challenge comes when you start to get pushback from a parent who's just not buying into that.
Well, I'll say this: we've done a great job of avoiding that.
Right.
Just through our evaluation process, like, we make sure that there's great alignment from day one. That we have a consensus with the player and family what the floor and the ceiling of that recruitment is going to look like, so that we don't get into a situation where that happens. But I know there's a lot of that out there right now, where guys start to get some offers, and all of a sudden, they want to try and take it from, hey, we've got these three offers, can we go and get five more? And it's like, at the end of the day, you can only go to one school, right? You can only commit to one school, and it's about again, finding a place where that coaching staff is invested. I always say, I think the best recruitments are coaches seeing you play, whatever it is, five or so times, you know what I mean, and it's taking the time to get you on campus and visit and build out the relationship, and there's been a dialogue, not necessarily over months, but at least over a few weeks, to really make sure that everybody is on the same page, leading to that commitment. And then obviously eventually to the kid getting to campus and having a great career.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question about the parents, I just want parents to know that it is a real thing with coaches, because I talk to Division I coaches all the time, and a lot of times when I'm calling somebody in on behalf of a student athlete that I'm training, a lot of times one of the question is, how are his parents? That is a valid question that they ask, and they're very used to dealing with that too. I had a conversation with Nate Yeski a few months ago, and I talked to him about the parents, and he said, "You know what? We're so used to that. We know how to handle that at this point." So it is
Sure.
something that's on their radar, to the point of
100%.
where they're used to, they'll figure out how to deal with it, and it might not always be beneficial to your kid. So I'm just saying, and what you're saying, mom and dads need to be more aware that the coaches are examining every move, and that's what you said, and that's really great advice. When you said become the best athlete you can be, brings me to my next question. I know you're a big proponent of strength training. Can you please talk just for a moment to my audience, who I'm always preaching what a strong body looks like to a coach when he's recruiting somebody before the kid even walks on the field? Can you talk a bit as to why you feel like strength training is such an important aspect?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's something that we talk about often with our players, and making sure that they understand what the requirements look like, in terms of off season versus in season, and what they need to be doing in that capacity, because of, how important it is. In terms of, the physicality and, that look that you're describing, we talk often about, you buy with your eyes, right? And it's no different when it comes to baseball players and guys who look good in the uniform and, have that frame and physicality to them, are going to attract, coaches to at least, begin the evaluation phase, right? Obviously, you still have to go out there and produce, right, and show your skill set. But at whether it's 5'10" or 6'2", right, if you have that athletic frame and some current strength, and it's obvious that you're doing the right things in the weight room, that's going to attract coaches, both from, again, that visual perspective, and then I think it's also a great checkpoint, for coaches to know that the kid's working, right? That, hey, this is a guy who understands what it takes, right? And it's going to get amped up at the college level, but he's in the weight room a certain amount of the time right now. He's a guy who's working behind the scenes. He's just not showing up and playing. And that's so much of the college level, right? I mean, think about it, right? You're on campus from, let's call it September all the way through May, right? You play 50-something games in the spring, right? So there's a lot of practice time. There's a lot of time in the weight room, right? The game is the reward. So you have to have guys who understand that and want to buy into that part of college baseball. It's not all the glitz and glamour of playing the game and, getting a chance to, certainly do it at a high level. There's a lot of hours spent at practice, individual work in the weight room, conditioning, early morning conditioning. And it's important that you have guys that buy into that. So as much as it is a physical standpoint, I think it's a great opportunity for coaches to really feel good that this is a young man who's going to be able to come in and handle that in terms of the commitment side at the the college level, whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3, it doesn't really matter.
When you talked about first impressions and people are impressed by their eyes, I can't remember quite exactly how you said it, but Josh Epstein, pitching coach at Richmond, told me one time that when he walks onto a field and he's looking for number 9 and he sees a strong body, he said it immediately looks energetic, positive, and athletic. And when you see a thin-framed person with slumped shoulders, a lot of times it can immediately give you the impression of lazy. He said, even before the kid has picked up a ball or a bat. And that's a huge thing. And what I can tell you from my side of it is when my high school seniors go to play baseball, a lot of times I will get phone calls from the coach or the pitching coach or the head coach and say, I just want to tell you that your guys show up here on day one as freshmen so advanced in the weight room that they actually begin to take on a leadership role as a freshman in the weight room, maybe not on the field, but it immediately acclimates them to feeling more comfortable around a bunch of older guys because they hold something in their hand that is, maybe, guy that's been with me for 3 years at RPP, he's going to go to college. His deadlift form is great. His back squat is great. He knows how to move. And that gives a kid a huge advantage on the other side of the coin that he might not have as a younger kid trying to do it on the field. So that's.
And also this too, I think there's a correlation between, guys who have really good habits in the weight room and just their confidence level.
100%. They get more confident. They like the way they look, So
yeah.
Okay, so closing up here, give me your top 3 best pieces of advice for making this recruiting process in this time this time that we're in a little smoother. Give me your top 3 best pieces of advice to athletes and parents.
Sure. Well, I mean, repetitive concept here right now, but spend a lot of time in the weight room. Number 2 is have a really good evaluation of your game. Number 3 is be a part of a travel ball organization that understands recruiting and is going to put you in the right places throughout the summer and fall recruiting period.
That is great advice. I picked up so much. Once again, when you're looking for a college, what I pulled from this is, you need to find a place where you can excel not only as a player, but as a student and a person. You got to look for, to become the best athlete you can be. Be patient. Don't rush the recruiting process. And don't make biggest advice that was great here is don't make a decision based on how great it looks on Instagram. Think about how it's working for you. And mom and dads, be conscious and aware that coaches are examining every move. Sam, I wrote these all down because this was just a really informative podcast for me. I'm going to steal all of this.
Hey, I've probably taken it from some people I've been around. So, I think, we talk about all the time. It's about empowering players and parents so that they have great information and can, hopefully help themselves in their journey to college baseball. Ultimately, like you said, the recruiting process is getting harder, and if they can have some things that benefit them, that's a great situation.
So Sam, tell us tell the listeners how they can reach you, how they can find you, any social media stuff, website.
Shoot. Yeah, absolutely. Website, collegesportsadvisors.com. There's a contact form on our website. That's a great place to reach us, set up a consultation. We can jump into some recruiting concepts through that forum. Also on Instagram at Sharf, SHARF, Sam, SAM _. And then we also have our College Sports Advisors Instagram, which is College Sports Advisors. So those are probably the 3 best places to get either myself or anybody on our staff here at CSA. and would love to speak to anybody and talk some recruiting on a higher level as well.
I've been dealing with Sam for years. There isn't a better guy and that's better at what he does than Sam. Him and also Mark DeSalvo. Mark DeSalvo's kids trained with me since they were in high school, both playing played at great colleges, played ball. These are two guys that really know a lot about baseball and really know a lot about the recruiting process. I highly suggest that you talk to them. As for me, you can reach me on Twitter at Nunzio Signore. You can reach my facility on Instagram and Twitter at RPP_baseball. Our website is www.rocklandpeakperformance.com. And if you get a chance, check out my book on velocity-based training, how to apply science, technology, and data to maximize performance. It's distributed by Human Kinetics, and you can get it on Amazon. Once again, guys, hope you enjoyed the show. Text me, email me with any questions or any comments. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks.